Despite recent successes in reforming the pension plan sector, it's important to recognize that plans still fail, and they do fail on a somewhat regular basis. When a plan defaults, say a regional municipality's pension plan for its firefighters or police officers, then usually its liabilities get absorbed into some kind of semi-public institution. For instance, in the United States, there's the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, which pension plans pay into as effectively a form of insurance that they might ultimately be underfunded. This works a lot like a deposit guarantee does for a bank, where all of the banks pay into a deposit fund to ensure that depositors' money is relatively safe, even if there is a collapse in the institution that they've provided funds to. The PBGC is designed to do the same sort of thing in the United States. However, it's important to note that unlike the guarantees on deposits, when your pension is restructured by one of these organizations, it generally involves a reduction of payouts, and rather substantially at that. In the case of Delphi's bankruptcy, a manufacturer who was spun out of General Motors in the early 2000s, when PBGC ultimately picked up its pension liabilities during its bankruptcy, it cut benefits anywhere from 30 to 70%. Now, the biggest problem associated with this is that the people who ran the pension fund before Delphi was spun out knew that it was underfunded, and yet they continued to operate the fund in a way that was almost certain to crash out by the time the 2008 financial crisis struck. And this was a significant problem because at the end of the day, these workers have given up wages that they could have otherwise received in exchange for pension benefits. These pension benefits were ultimately taken from them because of mismanagement by the corporate sponsors. So this is a significant problem. While it's nice that there is some kind of backup plan in place for when pension funds fail, it's also important for people to recognize that the insurance that exists will not provide full coverage, and that in general, you are lucky to get half the benefits that were promised to you if your pension plan is forced to restructure. Now, unfortunately, the Delphi bankruptcy also revealed something that was rather troubling to a large number of people, which was that most courts have ruled that pension fund obligations receive the same priority as an unsecured creditor, which is to say that basically everyone on the balance sheet, except for the shareholders, gets in line before the pension beneficiaries do, which of course leads to some significant questions about why assets haven't been necessarily segregated away from other corporate assets. So again, this highlights an important aspect of pension fund design, which is that an ideal form of pension plan, which will protect its beneficiaries, ultimately segregates these assets and has external directors who can hold sponsors to account when they fail to ensure funding requirements. Now, one of the major problems that we encounter with PBGC as well, and other such organizations that support failed pension plans, is that it can actually encourage moral hazard among pension directors and pension managers, because they recognize that at the end of the day, even if they fail, that someone else is going to pick up the mess behind them. And this can lead to a situation of the tragedies of the commons, whereby we have pension fund managers all trying to achieve high results so that they can earn private payouts, while recognizing that if they fail, that someone else is going to clean up the mess for them. Now, of course, this creates a significant drag on the funding of these types of organizations. And as of the end of 2020, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation in the States was in deficit by over $60 billion already, threatening its long-term survival and the possibility that it might be able to bail out other funds in the future. Now, it's important to recognize that we're not just talking about the failures of corporate pension plans, but also the failures of municipal pension plans. These have happened by the thousands over the last few years, and PBGC has ultimately had to restructure the vast majority of them in the United States. To try to understand what was leading to this large volume of pension fund failures, a few different studies were conducted. In 2013, a report by Jeff Hook and John Walters of the Maryland Public Policy Institute had the following to say. State pension funds, including Maryland, have succumbed for years to a popular Wall Street sales pitch that active money management beats the market. As a result, almost all state pension funds use outside managers to select, buy, and sell investments for the pension funds for a fee. The actual results, a typical Wall Street manager underperforms relative to passive indexing, is costly to both taxpayers and public sector employees. They go on to detail in their data set, looking at 5-year annualized rates of return from pension plans across all 50 states and comparing them to an indexed portfolio to compare what the actual returns would have been during the same period of time. And the indexed portfolio was found to return 2.2%, 2.19 more specifically, while the median state pension fund earned just 1.5%, suggesting a lag of as much as 1/3 behind the performance of an index fund. Now, of course, the obvious solution would be for all of these funds to simply switch towards passive management. But as Hook and Walters explain in their report, quote, getting pension fund administrators to support the policy and to educate legislators about indexing will be an uphill battle. By agreeing to the policy, administrators are essentially admitting that they made mistakes by betting heavily on active managers. And who wants to admit an error? Frankly, it's better for us to admit these kinds of errors as soon as they're detected and take corrective steps, as was done in the case of the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan or the Canada Pension Plan. Simply waiting until a pension fund crashes out and our elders are left to pick up the pieces is not an acceptable way for us to be planning for long-term benefits. Remember, these are not benefits for other people that we're thinking about. These are benefits for ourselves, and our own selfish interest ought to compel us to organize these sorts of pension funds better to ensure that all of the workers and beneficiaries who are contributing to them can be provided with a safe and secure retirement.